Good afternoon and welcome to Design Core Detroit's first virtual Design and Dine. For those of you joining us this afternoon, Design Core is a program of the College for Creative Studies, and we are the stewards of Detroit's UNESCO City of Design designation. As the champions of Detroit's design industry, it is our responsibility and our privilege to uplift the talent of Detroit and to position Detroit as a global hub for creative talent. One of the ways that we do that is to give opportunities and platforms for our local talent and design firms to share their expertise and experience with the broader community, and in particular with business decision makers and organizations who could benefit from their services and their expertise. This platform, Design and Dine, while normally we'd all be enjoying lunch together, and I want to thank Pophouse for sponsoring lunch for the first 25 registrants for today. But we've switched obviously to a virtual format in light of the safety concerns surrounding the global pandemic. We hope to be able to do this again in person sometime soon. But without further ado, I would like to introduce Lisa Moore, who's the Vice President of Business Development for Pophouse. Pophouse is a premier level member of the Detroit Design Network, and we welcome them to present today. Thank you, and hello, Lisa.
Hello, Bonnie, and thank you so much for that warm introduction and that warm welcome. I want to thank you and Design Core for hosting our event today. We are so proud to be a part of this Detroit design community and are excited to share some of our insights with the local businesses. So I want to extend a welcome to everyone who registered for this session. Our event is titled Psychological Safety Within the Built Environment. And our intent is to use this session as an organic conversation between our speakers about how office space has the ability to impact its employees. So a couple of reminders I want to give you. I'm sure you've been on some virtual meetings, but we do have a large group here today and we would like your participation. So there are two different opportunities to engage in the conversation. The first is to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So if you have questions while the speakers are talking, please type them into the Q&A section and we will save time at the end to address those questions. We will also be conducting some polling during this session. So when the polling pops up on your screen, please take a moment to answer the questions and we'll be sharing the results with you momentarily. I want to give a brief introduction to Pophouse. I know some of you may know us and others may not. So Pophouse is a commercial interior design studio in Detroit, Michigan. We started in 2013 with 5 designers and we have grown to over 30 team members. We are affiliated with Quicken Loans and the family of companies, which really gives us this unique ability to test out our research-based theories on how people work best. We also work with many companies outside of the family companies and would love to work with many of the companies in the audience as well today. Our team focuses on strategic, unconventional, and human-centric design. So our services that we offer include strategy consultations, interior design, environmental graphic design, and industrial design. And we really pride ourselves on our expertise in workplace design, but we also do work in hospitality and retail sectors as well. So I want to take this time to introduce our 2 speakers today. Our first speaker is Anna Okerhelm. Anna is a design director at Pophouse. She has a bachelor's degree in interior design from University of Miami, Ohio, with a minor in entrepreneurship. She has over 10 years experience in the industry, is lead green associate, and has won numerous awards for her design leadership on several projects. Anna started as one of the original team members at Pophouse and has risen to her position today as design director. Our second speaker is Sarah Davis. Sarah is our business intelligence account director at Pophouse. She has a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Michigan and has over 15 years experience working in business intelligence. She started as a data analyst at Quicken Loans and progressed to a director level. And then she transferred over to our team, and we're so fortunate to have her here as our Director of Business Intelligence. She has performed extensive research in workplace strategy and has been so instrumental in developing the strategy that informs the design for so many of our projects. So thank you, Anna and Sarah, for being here today. Before we get started, I have one more thing I want to review with you. So as part of the registration process, we asked you a question, and we asked you what the #1 challenge is at the moment. And the responses were varied, but there were some common themes that emerged. And so I wanted to share those with you, and then we will be weaving those into our conversation. So the 5 major challenges that emerged were, the first is staying connected with team members. The second is difficulty in collaborating remotely. The third is providing a safe, secure, and healthy work environment. The fourth challenge was suffering from virtual fatigue, which we are all experiencing. And the fifth is creating a supportive atmosphere for diversity. So thank you for sharing those challenges. We reviewed those, and they're going to be weaved into the conversation as both Sarah and Anna share their insights. So now I'd like to turn it over to Sarah to provide an introduction to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you, Design Core Detroit, for having us. We're really excited today to talk with you and really to think through where we are right now. And we've been through so much change in less than a year, and where we are headed is still quite uncertain at this point. Given all of that, our team has really been deeply researching what the future office looks like and what we can be focused on in terms of what that long-term future of work will be. However, what do we do in the meantime? How do we transition to that future of work and to what that new normal is going to be when we get there? So that's where we've been focused most recently. We have been thinking through, as Lisa mentioned, as one of our core principles and our focuses on crafting this human-centered approach. And that's really been our focus because we believe as an organization that the built environment has a large impact on its inhabitants. According to some research that we found through MIT, focusing on that team member experience and what they go through when they're in the office results in 25% greater profitability, 2 times the innovation, and 2 times greater customer satisfaction. So it's definitely something that can't be ignored. Today, we're going to share some affordances our team has pulled together to illustrate how office space has the ability to impact your team and why it is more important than ever to prioritize these elements. So Anna, let's get started by talking about where we were and what the corporate environment was that most of us were familiar with before COVID.
Sure, thank you, Sarah. So, as Sarah mentioned, we have been shifted drastically into this new way of working. The previous office landscape that most of us are familiar with really revolved around physical on-site presence with very few individuals working remotely. Gartner estimates that around 30% of workers were remote part-time before the pandemic, with only around 5 to 18% full-time remote. As corporations worked to maximize real estate, the open office was standard. There were a high percentage of team members in dense open office configurations, a small number of private offices, and a handful of conference rooms. Variety and diversity in space was really lacking. And because team members were quite regularly on site, dedicated workstations became the norm, and it made sense for the individual to sit in that station all day to handle a variety range of tasks. So with such an individual focus on that dedicated footprint of space, it really allowed little room for collaboration, innovation, and other cultural, social, and restorative needs from the team. This offered minimal opportunity as well for the individual to shift posture throughout the day and really pair their ideal setting to the task at hand. As well, technology integration and virtual considerations were less than ideal from the previous environment we're coming from. So we realized that that created this uneven playing field from those who were remote seeking to connect with the majority of the team members on site. So, I think we've all realized that playing field was a bit leveled as we've really gone into this fully remote working experience pre-COVID or post-COVID. So while the open office certainly lacked variety of space and held its flaws, we do recognize that there were quite ample opportunities for individuals and teams to collaborate because everyone was physically on site for the most part. We know organizational life is founded on relationships, and as we know, relationships require ongoing and often unintended interactions. So, they require mutual trust and cooperation, and really physical proximity is what fosters trust and cooperative relationships. A Google study found that employees sharing physical space exchanged information more effectively than those located even on separate floors. A more recent study found that water cooler socialization was critical to idea generation and innovation amongst teams at business incubators. And not sure what your experience is, but my water cooler situation at home is myself and my husband. So not a lot of opportunity to casually connect and collide with coworkers and team members that I typically would on any given day. So remote work, while undeniably cost effective, really tends to significantly reduce collaboration, even over digital channels. While studying a major technology company, remote workers communicated nearly 80% less about their assignments than co-located teams. So the obvious implication here is if team members need to interact to achieve milestones on projects, you don't want them working remote. So a look back at the corporate landscape previously that most of us are familiar with leaves ample room for opportunity when we think about the future of work. However, there are a few positive takeaways that we can and should integrate when we're planning ahead. The physical office, we don't believe is going anywhere. However, it needs to significantly adapt in order to survive. So thinking about where we're coming from, we'd love to get a bit more information from everyone on the webinar to understand your current circumstance and how your organization has shifted during this time. So Lisa is going to pull up a poll. As she'd mentioned, we'll be doing that a few times throughout the session to get your opinion.
Great, so thanks, Anna. As Anna mentioned, now we are going to take a pause here to conduct a poll on the current working situation. So I'm going to launch the poll, and I'm hoping that it's popped up on your screen, showing you the question. So the question is, are you currently working in one of these three settings? Remote full-time, in your workplace full-time, or a combination of both? And I'm seeing the answers coming in, so thank you. I'm going to give you a few more seconds to enter your answers. Okay. I'm going to end the polling and share the results. So here's a summary of the results. The majority of you, 73%, are working remote full-time. There is no one currently today that is in your workplace full-time, and there's about 27% of you that are working a combination of both. So some remote and some in the office. So I think it's so important. So many people are at home and may continue to work from home for a portion of their work week. So Sarah and Anna now are going to talk about where we are today and what we need to consider as we look to re-enter the workplace.
Absolutely. And so thank you for participating. That was really interesting to see and very much mimics a lot of what we've seen through our research, as well as talking with different clients, that about 3/4 of the individuals are working from home completely. They're remote, they're off-site, where 1/4 or 25% roughly are on-site at some point of time. So, similar to also what you shared during registration that Lisa went through at the top of the meeting, there is a lot going on, and there's a lot of concerns, and there are a lot of things that we are now dealing with and experiencing that we weren't in a pre-COVID world. And, people are very much focusing hard on staying connected as being one of those really paramount concerns right now, of being able, as Anna mentioned, to have those working relationships, those important conversations that help to tie the threads within an organization when we are in this remote setting. And also the ability to collaborate and work together to hit those milestones and make progress with work are part of all of the adjustments of truly working at home. And so, as we see, we are primarily remote. Research has shown that millions of Americans have shifted over this last couple of months to working predominantly at home. There are a small core group of people that are considered critical on site that may still be continuing to go in. But as we know, if you were able to facilitate your job from home, you really started to make that shift and do so. We're in the middle of uncertainty. We've had clients that have started to bring team members back on site, to bring them back into the office space, and actually started to roll that back as different incident rates started to uptick in different regions. So you see a lot of uncertainty with COVID, not quite sure what's going on. There's a lot of regional differences. And then depending upon the type of work and industry and different pockets where these rates are on different scales, that's really causing a real disruption to work and the economy and to life. And also this idea that it's unclear when to transition. When is the right time? What do we need? What are those different types of flags that we're looking for that are indicators that it's the right time? And so companies are grappling with this decision in a very big way to make sure that things are safe for their team members to come back on site, and trying to decide when that right time is. And so there's some companies that have delayed the start to the end of the year. There are other companies like Google and Facebook that have said next summer, allowing people that year with terms of lease and things like that to make different choices with their life. And some companies altogether have said we are going to be permanently remote, like Twitter and Atlassian, who've said we are going to not bring people back to the office at all. And so as you start to see, this is showing that it's truly up to the companies to examine what makes sense for them and to make those adjustments to their space to truly optimize for health and safety in the short term, but also to think about that human-centered design and what that can mean for their organization and what these adjustments are that can truly have a significant impact on the individuals in the space.
So as Sarah mentioned, there is a very wide spectrum right now of where individuals and companies are at in terms of their transition back to the office. No matter where you're at on the spectrum, we recognize that the primary consideration is the health and wellness of the team members and the individuals that you may be bringing back on site. So we want to share a few tangible things. While we're not going to focus on the short term as much in this webinar, we feel it's important to set a few baseline foundational suggestions as to how to make your team feel confident and comfortable upon reentry. They will depend greatly on clear communication and transparency from leadership to really ease their anxiety coming back. So the first category is really as simple as that. It's communication. An increase in executive and/or HR communication will be really critical so that team members have expectations and their anxiety is eased coming back, whether it's full-time, part-time, or on a hybrid schedule. Communication also regarding timelines and phasing is important, and also really important to give individuals ample time to prepare for that phasing, recognizing that a lot of people are dealing with scheduling conflicts, whether it's personal, health related, maybe with childcare concerns, and really lack of clarity on schools reopening as well. So giving team members time to prepare for when they may be going back on site and plan ahead. Another thing to consider are reentry plans based on reduced on-site density, blended schedules, and flexibility. Core hours can be implemented. I know this is something we're talking about with our team because we're a very creative, collaborative team. It is to our benefit to maximize time on site as a team so that we can collaborate, strategize, have meetings in person, and gather safely and save that focus work for home. Also providing individuals with necessary PPE, obviously, to wipe down areas of communal spaces that are commonly used, and perhaps consider a kit of parts that they're given to eliminate sharing of equipment and supplies. Also, I think there is a lot to the introduction of frequent and visible cleaning schedules. So team members see cleaning happening, they know the schedule, they feel confident in the safety of the environment they will be returning to. Another category that you've probably heard quite a bit about is materiality in the environment. So consideration of smart materials, cleanability, durability, as well as perhaps more integration of a touchless, hands-free environment, thinking about switches, doors, badge readers. How do we eliminate some of these commonly used touch points throughout the space? Another thing, antimicrobial and bleach cleanable fabrics sound quite clinical. However, they've come a really long way and can easily be integrated in high usage areas. You could also consider antimicrobial coatings for seating and workstation surfaces that are most commonly used. A big one too, if you have it, consider access to outdoor space if at all possible. I know we only have a few short months in our lovely state of Michigan to take advantage of that, but certainly do so while you can to allow team members to gather safely. Another easy, tangible win is technology and signage. Integration of more technology-enabled spaces within your workspace will allow the support of remote and distributed work. It'll enhance digital connections within all spaces so that team members, whether remote or on site, have the tools they need to connect, collaborate, and interact efficiently. We've all seen working from home the time you can lose to technology. Wayfinding and signage are also another easy win. This removes the guesswork and allows individuals to relax into new behaviors and norms. So whether it's physical or visual cues to demonstrate circulation paths, proper use of space, allowable capacity of a room, if you've kind of swapped function, that allows team members to settle into a space in a more natural way because they know the intended use. So I think what we've learned is individuals have a really high investment right now in regards to physical space. They've been able to control their home environment quite a bit during this time. So bringing them back and involving them in the process is critical. Allowing team members the opportunity to voice their concerns and preferences can also help guide your approach and allow further transparency along the way. So we have another quick poll that Lisa's going to run in relation to this topic.
So thank you, Anna. And as Anna mentioned, you know, it is really important for employees to share their thoughts and comfort levels. So our next poll that we're going to share with you is regarding the future of work. Surveyed the team about your thoughts and feelings. Oh, it's failed to launch. Okay, here we go. Has your employer surveyed the team about your thoughts and feelings around returning to work? So you can answer yes or no if you've been surveyed on your thoughts. And while you're adding your answers in, you know, we pulled some research on this, and there's a poll report conducted by Just Capital and Harris Poll. And it states ongoing and open communication is also landing with consumers. Among people with at least a fair amount of knowledge about companies' COVID-19 responses, 75% believe companies are on the right track. Compared to 40, know a little bit, just employees. And in looking at the results, it looks like 30% of you have been surveyed and 70% have not. And so I think that just shows that there's a lot of work we need to do in getting the teams involved and making sure that they're being communicated with as far as what our plans are for return to work.
Thanks, Lisa.
So now I'm going to turn it back to Anna to introduce. Now I'm going to turn it back to Anna to introduce the affordances and how those are so critical for bringing people back into the office.
Thanks, Lisa. So it sounds like a few of you have been asked to voice your opinion on that transition back to the office, which is fantastic. Receiving that buy-in from team members on their comfort level is really crucial during this time. So talking a bit about affordances, we're seeing this instrumental shift in the approach to work. So while some have returned to critical on-site positions, others have managed to remain productive and engaged while remote for quite a bit of time now. We've recognized that we cannot only work in different places, but work in different ways. So crafting the right environment to the task at hand is paramount. This awareness and experience that we've gained during this time starts to allow us to reset behavior and demonstrates alternatives that perhaps were not tolerable before, or not possible because we all were expected to be on site at all times. This has really been described as the age of the empowered worker. While many of the prior norms are beginning to shift, we have a chance to craft this new normal. So the longer amount of time we spend working remote, the more severe and foreign that transition back to the office is going to be for individuals. So no matter where you're at along this spectrum of change and adjustment, we can start to recognize a few mindset and behavioral shifts that can inform the ideal environment moving forward. So an affordance is referred to as something the environment offers the individual. Affordances are so important because we look to understand and strike the balance within the future of work. Through this pandemic, colleagues have adapted and experienced a sense of connection and trust with each other in brand new ways. We've learned how to adapt and discover our own affordances within our remote environments. So a few examples of this: organizations right now are focusing more on outcomes than micromanaging time spent in the office. This gives greater flexibility, productivity, and balance in schedules for the individual. And we've settled into a place where leadership can trust the work is getting done in a quality manner, even though we aren't all physically present. Another thing that we've recognized through this time is individuals and teams have been tasked with continuing to make progress, oftentimes having to rethink their approach, deal with these new virtual platforms, and adjust their means of collaboration. This requires crucial trust with one another. We've really had to come together as individuals and teams to build that trust, remain productive, and strive for these business outcomes. So we've seen a lot of creativity in workarounds and supporting one another. And the last one being, we have through this time allowed people into our homes virtually and exposed more of our personal lives. So because of this, colleagues have built a greater sense of empathy, understanding, and I believe trust with one another. Whether it was by intention or circumstance, it's happened. So on a personal level, we have the need to build connection and trust and to be able to support and lean on one another during these times. So if someone's child pops in to our meeting, it's a welcome kind of respite, right? We've allowed each other to just laugh and enjoy and understand that we all have things going on outside of our day-to-day work. And we've empathized around that. So we're going to talk a bit more about affordances. I'll let Sarah jump in to the first.
Absolutely. I definitely think there's a huge emphasis there on that empathetic type of lens and perspective that people are going through right now. And so, as Anna mentioned, we have derived 4 affordances. I'm sure we could go deeper, but just for the sake of today's webinar, that we really think are critical ways, and hopefully being able to share with you what those affordances are, as well as ways to implement and think through and consider them in your workspace. And so thinking through this idea of always a layer of health and safety at the forefront, as we spoke about earlier, but also this idea of having that really thoughtful lens towards curating the space that is truly supporting individuals and allowing them to thrive while they're on site, and giving them that, this idea and this space that we are going through a tremendous reset. And so what do we look like as we move through this and then come out on the other side? And so the affordances that we are going to focus on today are work setting variability, adaptability, restorative interiors, and quiet space. And so I'm going to get started with the first affordance, the work setting variability. And so as we talked about before, when we started this quarantine period, we really were in this mode of being in a big open office space. We had a lot of assigned seating and really typically this lack of communal space. So there wasn't a lot of gathering space. And a lot of that was something that had evolved over time, where companies have these really great intentions to set aside space for conferencing, meetings, socialization. But as war rooms and the cost of real estate goes up and the growth of teams start to build, slowly but surely that communal space starts to be eaten away. And because everyone has an assigned seat, workstations take up a ton of space. And so those communal gathering spaces started to ebb and flow and not be as prevalent. And so as we talked about, as people have been remote, they've had some bit of autonomy in terms of how and where they work within their space, right? So they've been able to select seating options that work for them. They've had control over background noise sometimes. Sometimes there's those little interruptions that come with households, as Anna mentioned, but they've had some control over temperature and maybe adjustments to lighting. And so they could move around their day aligned with these tasks. And in some ways, that's different than the experience they were having with the level of choice in the office. And so that's why we bring this up first. So things that we can consider here in terms of providing that support and empathy and that transition is the idea of collaboration, right? And so collaboration, there's been this big conversation about why office, why will people come back? And as we talked about, there is a really big need for people to be able to be brought back physically together in a way that they're not able to do today. And so they have those casual collisions, they have those water cooler conversations, they're able to tie threads with their work and also cultivate relationships that are so important to the foundation of your culture and to your organization. And so this really drives that innovation. So how can we set up the office in a way that is able to be supportive of collaboration and maybe rethinking? We've had clients who may have been pulling back on assigned seating for all of their team members, knowing that people will be coming in and out of the space a little bit more fluidly in the future. And so knowing that and knowing that people will be on site and remote, allowing that sense of virtual connection to really be at the forefront, always making sure that your team, if they are moving through that space and you're providing a variety of work settings, that they can plug in and make sure that they have that integrity of that virtual experience, no matter where they are within your floor plate. And that idea that people may be on rotating schedules and that flexibility, and they might be coming in one day or a couple hours a day for core hours, just allowing them to move through the space very fluidly in a way of collaborating both physically and remotely. The other consideration here is this idea of neurodiversity. And according to research, 1 in 8 people are actually considered neurodiverse, but fewer than 50% know it. And so a few examples of neurodiverse conditions would be ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, autism. And so really understanding and reflecting on the idea that not everyone works the same way. Not everyone works seated at a workstation, plugged in, for 8 hours a day or a span of time. And so really, what types of space are needed for individuals to perform all of the different types of work that they're doing during the day and be successful at that? And really including these spaces is so important for building inclusive environments for all. And that idea that at its most basic level, we have people who have some anxiety. They've been off site for a while. They may have some anxiety. They may have situations and personal circumstances that give them anxiety about the current environment. And so returning on site can provide a bit of that anxiety and that tension and stress for people. So knowing that an office is set up, that it's being derived and being thought, there's layers of thought and intention going in to that health and safety, and not assigning them to a workstation that might not be a fit for them mentally or physically, can really go a long way for people being able to lean in and be successful while they're on site. So those are a few ways that summarize our first affordance, which is work setting variability.
So another important affordance that we've actually worked through quite a bit recently with clients that we had work in progress through this time is adaptability. So the capacity for the office to flex and adapt to meet the demands of future work is going to be so important to think through moving forward. We obviously know there's quite a bit of uncertainty, but what we can do is plan for flexibility. So creating a plan that is both short-term and long-term with variation in between that allows for multiple execution points, different flexible kit of parts is really important. In some of our recent work, we have had to take a pause, take a step back, look at our strategy, understand the organization's approach to reentry. So thinking about what team members now will be on site moving forward, at what percentage will they be on site? Will it be through core hours? Will it be a hybrid schedule of on site half the week, on site or home half the week? So thinking through the strategy for each team, we can then craft their workspace. And to do that, we've started to think through desk orientations, furniture options that organically allow for responsible spacing between individuals without feeling forced or uncomfortable. We have increased circulation paths, decreased density on any given floor, removed any sort of benching workstation system, but instead moved to a kit of parts in regards to workstations and offices that can adapt and pivot in the future. So perhaps a few years down the line, should we go back to a more densified office environment that we previously came from, we're able to pivot, perhaps bench that system's furniture and allow more people on site with a dedicated desk. Another thing that we've thought quite a bit about in regards to that piece in particular is power and data. You can certainly plan ahead and maximize that power and data plan for long term, knowing that that could shift in a year, 2 years, we don't quite know yet. But considering also the why behind coming on site, that's an exercise we've gone through quite a bit in the past few months. Why will team members be coming on site? What will be the purpose? What kind of tasks are they seeking? And that's really going to shift. So consider moving away from dedicated workstations. You can use that space to repurpose for innovation, collaboration, allowing social spaces, spaces for respite, for health and wellness, for teams to gather, and or take a moment to step away for a minute or two and recenter. So thinking about how we can start to repurpose some of the square footage that we may gain back with a bit of hybrid scheduling. Also consider the types of spaces, as Sarah mentioned, team members have been afforded while working from home. They're able to change position throughout the day, pick a setting that pairs well with the task at hand. So think about the ability within your office environment for team members to pick up, plug in throughout the landscape, change posture throughout the day, seated versus standing height perhaps, if they can perch. We know that we're re-energized when we take a break, when we get up, when we change posture. So that all impacts the bottom line. So while we still believe that focus work will be important and will happen in the office moving forward, it's perhaps something that may happen in a larger percentage at home, should employees still plan to work at home moving forward. So there's going to be this rebalancing of individual I space to this communal we space. And we think that's going to facilitate and maximize even greater collaboration and group work on site moving forward. So, as you're thinking through bringing teams back, really think about what the priority is and what the need is for them to be on site and what's going to facilitate that work the best. So that summarizes adaptability. There's a lot I could go into there, but we'll keep moving and I'll let Sarah jump into our third affordance.
Thank you. So our third affordance is restorative interiors. And one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit so far is this idea that currently team members and individuals have had this empowerment over their space. So they've moved from the office to a remote setting and they have some choice and flexibility. in terms of adjustments, which goes a long way in terms of them being able to select spaces that really match the type of work they need to do and who they are as a person in terms of approaching their work. The other thing that we haven't touched on as much is this idea that when people are in their home, they're in somewhat of a sacred spot. They're in a space that has a high level of personalization. And there's been research that we've been leaning into this summer and looking at in terms of how personalization in a space can really impact somebody. And so being able to be surrounded by objects that are familiar to them, that they feel a part of, to have artifacts that resonate with them particularly, actually allows people to be more productive and actually higher performant in a space that they feel is inclusive of themselves. And that actually translates as well into the office when they feel a team, when they feel that they are part of the team and they feel that they're welcome and they're, that this is space is, they have some ownership on that space. And so that is a big part of our current situation. And when we think about that future situation, how can we pull some of those threads through and make sure that those still are represented in that office space? Also, in addition, typically in a space like this, you're not being inundated with a lot of the things in the office that you typically would be, like large groups of people. We have a lot of tours in our office space that go through our space that you have a lot of noise and distraction by. You have drive-bys where people are coming by to ask you a question when they see you at your desk. You know, meeting and phone call noise around you. I know our team plays music, which sometimes is a little distracting for me. So thinking through all of those layers of things that people are constantly being thrown at them. And on the other side of the discussion right now, and that flip side of that is that in this new world, we are so much more exposed to this idea of that virtual mental screen fatigue, right? Our whole world is now basically centered around this computer in front of you. And so you're really anchored to this screen. And so one of the things we've been looking at with some of these spaces and our clients is this idea of, which is actually interesting, is this idea of layers of analog along with digital. So as we've talked about, it's super important for all of your spaces to be very much connected. So people, whether they're on site, can plug in and start to communicate with people virtually. But how can we actually continue to stoke the fire of this analog layers, which actually fire in your brain cognitively different ways so that you actually are inspired and creative in different ways when you're drawing and writing things out. It's actually doing different things mentally for you. So how can we balance those things and allow people a moment to step away and have those moments of analog, which are still really important to that creative and ideation process? So those are additional layers to think through as well with your office space. But you know, as we think about and you look at your footprint of space and you think about people coming back, look at circulation paths, look at how people are oriented around those paths and how traffic flow is. If people are on aisles and their back is to the kitchen and it's a noisy kitchen, how is that going to affect people being able to perform, especially when they've been out of that space for an extended period of time? Another thing is thinking through maybe the addition of partitions and really bringing these partitions or wall systems in to help with shield visual and acoustic distractions from people so that they can work when they are on site and also keep their noise in if they're ideating and being part of a group. Additional layers are art and biophilia. Biophilia, this idea that humans have this innate connection to seek nature and different forms of life. Biophilia, sometimes we think about plants right away, but it can be any element of nature that is introduced into a space. So even imagery of natural elements or natural features like wood tables and things like that. And this idea that biophilia has a really big impact on individuals. So this idea of greater vitality, mental clarity, reducing stress, improving mood and creativity. Indoor office plants can actually prevent fatigue during attention demanding work. So really helping people to focus and concentrate. And lastly, I would just mention color and being thoughtful about color. I mean, it's one thing, and we've done so many surveys of people, and it's so interesting where for every person you say, I love purple, you've got another person saying, I hate purple, please don't put it here. So there's a spectrum and everyone has personal preference, but there are some generalities of how color can affect us. And so thinking through how color can stimulate us or soothe us and being thoughtful about how you include and where you include. And this also goes back to that variety of space of thinking through providing spaces that have a lot of different attributes to them, so that if this space doesn't work for me, I can seek out one that does in order to get my work done. So think about your interior, think about how it is having an impact on the people who are in the space, and it can be used for a restorative means as well. And so that really wraps up our third affordance of restorative interiors.
So the fourth affordance we're going to go into a bit, which I think pairs really nicely with the one Sarah just talked through, is quiet space. So building in time and space for reflection and pause in the office. While we've been working remote, we've all been able to flex our schedules a bit and take the time we need built into our day organically to maybe take a walk, grab lunch with your spouse or your children, just step outside for a moment, enjoy the sunshine, take a breath, and moving back into an office environment, it's going to be so important for not only the space to support that, but for organizations culturally to support that as well. So this is an affordance that we've all kind of crafted on our own, working remotely at this time, but traditionally, offices didn't supply this kind of space as an amenity to team members. So this could be space for workouts, yoga, perhaps meditation rooms, prayer rooms. You think about, to someone who is extroverted, maybe grabbing a coffee with a coworker in a small cozy nook is their idea of taking a break and a pause. So could be different types of spaces for different types of people. However, going forward, these amenity spaces are going to be necessary, empathetic inclusions to your programming. It allows individuals a chance to retreat from the hustle and bustle, as Sarah said, that they're really not quite used to right now, working from home for an extended period of time. So thinking through how you can achieve this, embedding this priority within your culture is key. So letting team members know that it's acceptable, it's prioritized for you to take a moment and step away, and empowering them to speak up when they need to do so. I think this starts at the leadership level. So taking advantage of these opportunities, if you are at the executive or leadership level, to show team members that it's also a priority to you and you are messaging that it's okay. And this really impacts the organization's bottom line. We are all more productive and healthier when we're able to take those breaks. So share also that research, be transparent about why it's important. Really promote well-being, craft initiatives that your team feels strongly about. This is another great area to get the team involved, and survey them, poll them, ask them what types of activities or amenities would support the type of reflection and pause that is most important to them. So another great area to include your team and understand their needs. And you know, according to recent reports, 93% of tech industry employees said that they would stay longer with an employer who provided healthier workplace benefits. So when it comes to attracting and retaining talent moving forward, I think this is going to be one of the largest components and something that cannot be continuously ignored. We know that it promotes productivity, supports cognitive function, and will impact that bottom line. So the other thing that is important to success of these types of spaces is ensuring they're planned properly. So think about adjacency to other programmatic pieces. You're obviously not going to want a nap pod or a prayer room near a bustling kitchen or a social area. Think about acoustics, temperature, access to natural daylight, perhaps biophilia in these types of spaces. That really would provide a comfortable setting for a team member to feel that they can step away and restore. So this summarizes our fourth affordance, and we would love to understand from you which one of these is resonating the most. Perhaps these are affordances you've talked through in your own organization or new to you, but we'd love to do a quick poll to see, you know, which ones resonate the most with you.
Yeah, thank you, Anna and Sarah, for sharing those 4 affordances. And we actually got a comment in the chat. Rachel Downs mentions that she feels that she has less flexibility in this remote environment. Back-to-back Zooms and squeezing in the work and deliverables in between is really taxing. I'm working harder than ever. I think so many people are feeling that, and it is taking a toll on us. And so it is important to to bring in that space for reflection and pause, not only when we return to work, but in the setting that we're at right now with remote work. So thank you for commenting on that. As Anna mentioned, we are going to share our final poll, and this is really talking about the 4 different affordances that were just reviewed with you. And we wanted to know which consideration resonates the most with you. Is it the work setting variability? Is it the adaptability, the restorative interiors, or the quiet space? So please go ahead and cast your votes on what's most important to you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close out the polling and share the results. So it looks like there's an even split between work setting variability and adaptability being very important. And then restorative interiors and quiet space, also still important to several people. I think, you know, what we've noticed, because we do so much surveying as we design spaces, is that every team has different priorities. And so it is important to gather that information from the team members as to what they need to work most effectively, and then integrate that into the design. So thank you for sharing in that last poll. Now what I wanted to do was turn over to questions that you had submitted. And I have a few that I've gathered from the pre-registration questions, but also feel free to go in and add some into the Q&A portion. So I'm going to start with my first question to Sarah and Anna is, how can I best maximize my home office environment to accommodate for work-life functions?
Thanks, Lisa. So I think the comment in the chat is spot on. I found myself in the same kind of tailspin moving to this virtual environment, nonstop back-to-back meetings. It almost seemed more fatiguing than doing the same type of schedule in office. So I went through a couple months where I was in that tailspin, and I realized I really needed to think about the environment I was creating for myself at home, and I needed to speak up and be vocal about what I needed to be successful to my employer in that environment. So obviously there are tons of home office furniture options out there that are adaptable, flexible, whether you have a dedicated home office footprint or you're perhaps dual purposing a room in your home, as many of us are, sharing a space with a spouse and kids. There are acoustical screens, divisions, types of modular pieces that you can use to quickly change and adapt from your workday to work or your home life when you transition at night. But I have realized what's helped me the most is behavioral routines and signals to myself when I am transitioning from one to the other. So I have created a routine in the morning where I know I am starting work, I'm on, I know what I need to get done that day, I have my list of things to do, but I also have built-in breaks, and I put those moments of quiet space and pause in my calendar so that they are sacred, and I do have time if I need to step away. Of course, things come up, but if you put it in your calendar, it's much more likely to happen. But you know, think about how you can limit distractions, how you can signal to yourself, right, when my day is done, close the door. Close the door to my guest room that is now my home office, right? It's a dual purpose space. It has to flip. But I have to signal to myself that when it is time to stop working for the day, so that I am keeping my health and wellness at the forefront. So tons of flexible products, but also I think the behavioral routines are really important to be able to signal to yourself when you're transitioning from work to home life.
Great, thanks, Anna. Those are all really great tips and hints of ways we need to make sure that we provide ourselves those breaks, intermediate breaks. The next question that I have is, how can we create spaces that promote culture in this new world?
I can take that one. I think that culture is a really interesting topic, especially now, more than ever, with companies moving off-site. And so there were a lot of things that may have been taken for granted because you weren't on site. And so now really how that culture and how we exhibit our culture and how we are able to participate in our culture is shifting a bit, right? Because we're not on site together physically. So how can we pull that through? And I know our team has tried to do different types of events and activities to try to bring our team together and continue, making sure that we're being strong to our core values and continuing to move forward, and keeping that culture alive. And so I think that connection is a really big key of all of this, and making sure that the culture is really strong is the sense of the individuals that are part of that organization. I think, we've gone back and we've surveyed a lot of our team and talked to our team. I think that making sure you have your finger on the pulse of what is happening and what team members need is really important. And then also, as you think about culture, thinking about the tenets of your culture and what are those important pillars that exist, and how does space help you achieve and reflect those cultural pillars. So if collaboration, if innovation is really important to your culture, for instance, how are we making sure that the space reflects that and also helps to promote that? And so how do we translate those particular pillars in our example here of collaboration and innovation into tangible space? And how do we actually have that manifested so that as people who are coming on site, they're immediately exposed to that culture, our brand, who we are, and what is really important to us.
Thank you, Sarah. And I miss that in-person culture so much. So we have about 4 minutes left. I want to give Sarah and Anna just a couple of minutes each to share some of their closing thoughts, what they're most excited about from their perspective looking forward, and then we'll wrap up the session. And if there's additional questions, feel free to share those too. We can always respond to you through email. So I'll turn it over to Anna and Sarah.
Sure. So I think I'll go first. The thing that I'm most excited about, and talking from a workplace strategy perspective and that research that I'm doing, is really about putting the individual at the center of design. So really thinking about how individuals are impacted and what is that connection with the built environment and the human, and how this ultimately can affect well-being. I understand, and I'm a huge proponent that simple changes in our workplace can really make a huge difference. So I am very excited by the research that's being done right now, the questions and the conversations, this dialogue, and continuing to interact and engage with people on this topic.
So similar to Sarah, I am excited because I really don't think that we will get another opportunity like this to think about what is ideal, what's ideal in terms of our office landscape. I mean, candidly, the office has not changed greatly in years. The sit-to-stand was a great invention. It's around, it's been around. We have to think about placing the human and the individual at the center of everything. And for too long, I think that that's been ignored. So I think that this shift is an opportunity for us to take advantage of the quick growth and adaptation that we've had to experience, and learn from it and grow from it, and understand how we translate that now into the built environment moving forward. So, digging into this research with Sarah, getting that hands-on experience with clients and working through this, even though so much is uncertain, has just been really exciting to start to think about the opportunity we have to start to craft healthier environments, think about well-being truly at the forefront, and really give users a preference and a choice and involve them in the process, because I think that's going to allow for healthier environments and more productivity across the board.
Great. Thank you, Anna and Sarah, so much for your insight. I'm sure everybody was able to take away so much information. I wanted to share my screen to provide our contact information so that you can feel free to reach out to us, which is something that I'm struggling with. I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie. I know she has some closing thoughts, and while she's doing that, I'll figure out how to get my screen up.
Thank you so much, ladies. That was really interesting conversation, and so many things resonated with me. I mean, I know as a non-designer, but an active, obviously, employee and participant on our team in our physical space in normal times and here at home now. You said some things that I hadn't even been aware I had been thinking of. I know Olga mentioned the other day, our executive director, that she really missed her whiteboard. So when you were talking about that kind of ability to get creative with the analog, and I thought, you know, I kept saying I miss my big giant calendar on my wall so I can just see what's coming. So a lot of that really resonated with me, and the idea, of course, of being able to stand up and move around. And my dream would be a treadmill desk, but I'm probably never going to get that. So even just a place to stand sometimes. I think it's really interesting, and all the research you've done just really proves how much goes into the design of our spaces, and just, you know, what kind of expertise that designers in that area bring to the table. So I really want to thank you for sharing it with all of us today. For those of you still on, I put a link in the chat to the Detroit Month of Design schedule. It is live. It begins, of course, on September 1 and goes for 30 days. We have almost 70 events, many of which are virtual. But we also do have plenty of opportunities to get out and about in the city, practicing safety and social distance, of course, wear your mask. We have self-guided tours. We have timed ticketed events to some experiences, and plenty of other things to see for everyone on almost every day of the month. So we welcome you to join us. We look forward to seeing you out and about from 6 feet away. It's going to be the best month of design yet. So thank you, Pophouse. Thank you, Lisa, Anna, and Sarah, for your expertise and for being an active member of the Detroit Design Network. We welcome any questions to info@designcore.org if you're interested in more information about the network or about Month of Design. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
you.